Good morning and welcome to our conference presentation titled Relationships Matter. Start the school year with research-based relationship building practices that improve student outcomes. My name is Joe Treacy, and to get us started, we have a short clip to help get us oriented with the topic at hand.
Name is Harry Do you know anything about the Chamber of Secrets? Tell me.
All right, after having watched that clip, I'd like to ask you all to use the QR code on your screen. That will take you to a Padlet where you can answer one of these questions pertaining to the video. This would be a good time to pause the video so you can take a moment to respond and perhaps look at some of the responses of your classmates as well. Welcome back from the Padlet. We appreciate your responses, and we'll come back around at the significance of this clip a little bit later in our presentation. And now let's go over some of the key questions and topics we aim to address through this presentation. Firstly, what exactly are TSRs? Simply put, TSRs are teacher-student relationships, or academic relations between teachers and their students. These are crucially relevant for a myriad of reasons. Namely, the quality of TSRs are fundamentally important to classroom dynamics, the effectiveness of teacher instruction, as well as student learning. Positive relationships between teachers and students also promote a sense of school belonging and encourage students to participate more cooperatively. And while all of this sounds intuitive enough on the surface, we as teachers must be intentional in our behaviors and strategies if we are to effectively promote positive TSRs within our own classrooms. It can be far too easy for relationship building to fall by the wayside once the school year begins to kick into high gear. Thankfully, a little planning and intentionality goes a long way to help bolster positive TSRs for the benefit of both teachers and students. And before diving into the research behind our presentation, let's go over the two overarching hypotheses that will be guiding everything we're going to be talking about. Firstly, positive TSRs can improve student engagement and academic achievement. And then secondly, positive TSRs can be facilitated through the use of dialogue journals.
Thanks, Joe. So the first study we're going to talk about is a study about leveraging similarity between teachers and students. It was by Gelbach et al. So this study, the way it was set up was with a group of 315 ninth graders and 25 of their teachers. And it started by having the students and teachers complete a get to know you survey. And the get to know you survey included all sorts of questions. It was about 25 questions. You can see examples of some of them at the right here. Most important quality of a friend. If you could go to one sporting event, which one would you go to? So students and teachers completed the survey, and then students were split into two groups. You had the teacher treatment group. These were students who 2 weeks after taking the survey were told what questions or what answers rather that they had given that were similar to their teachers or that their teachers had also given. And then the teacher control group, that was the other half of the students, those ninth graders, and they were not told what they had in common with their teacher from this survey. Instead, they were told what they had in common with another student. So you had the teacher treatment group and the teacher control group, and then the teachers themselves were only told the similarities that they shared with students in the teacher treatment group. So you had a group of students, half of them knew similarities that they shared with their teachers, and the teachers knew those similarities as well. And you had the teacher control group. And so this was done over a 9-week quarter. And the initial get to know you survey was administered in the first week. Results were reported back, or similarity results reported back to students and teachers in the 3rd week. And then the rest of the 9 weeks passed. And then researchers measured self-reported student perception of their teacher-student relationship and similarity to their teacher, and then self-reported teacher perception of teacher-student relationship and the similarity to the teacher. And then also, and most importantly, student grades were tracked. And so the hypotheses of the researchers were that students who were in this teacher treatment group, the group that shared the results of the similarities they had with their teachers, and the teachers knew those similarities as well, would have higher grades at the end of the 9 weeks. This will take a minute here so you can look at the results from this survey, from this study. And so you can see here we have our teacher control group in blue, our teacher treatment group in this reddish orange, and then something called white and Asian in the white bar. On our y-axis here, what they've done is standardize the effect size of these three different categories down here. We have teacher similarity, that's teacher perception of the similarity they have with their students, and then the teacher perception of the teacher-student relationship. But we're going to focus here in on the student grade portion. And what you can see here is that students who were in the teacher control group on average had a GPA of 2.63 at the end of that 9-week quarter, while students who were in the teacher treatment group had an average GPA of 3.0. So 2.63 is a little below a B-. Those were students who were not aware of the similarities they shared with their teachers, and the teachers were not aware of the similarities they shared with their students. But that teacher treatment group, we can see, was significantly higher, half a letter grade higher than the students in the teacher control group. This white and Asian bar here is just to control for race and socioeconomic status at the school where this was done. But we can see here if this white and Asian bar represents the top performers, and then the teacher control group, which also includes white and Asians, incorporates the bottom performers, that this gap from the white bar to the blue bar would be the achievement gap between, or a rough estimation of the achievement gap between the well-served and underserved populations. And we can see when this intervention, this similarity intervention is used, this gap is closed by about 65%.
So the second study that we decided to focus on was how teachers impact student engagement. So this was a study done by Cooper in 2014. It was conducted during the 2009-2010 school year. And it kind of goes over 3 different types of instruction and then how they affect classroom engagement. So the first one is connective instruction, right? So that's trying to promote relevance, trying to connect your lessons to students, enabling care and self-expression. Then we have academic rigor, which is providing challenging work, showing that you have a passion for the content, pushing students. And then we have lively teaching, which is a lot about using games, fun activities, having students work in groups and projects. And then classroom engagement for the study was under 3 different categories. They have behavioral engagement, which is how a student should be behaving in class, like following directions, listening. We have cognitive engagement, which is when you want students using that mental energy. So they're thinking about new content, struggling with the content. And then you have emotional engagement, which is when how a student feels about a class, right? So are they enjoying it? Do they feel like they're interested? Are they comfortable? And this study is all student perceived. So this is how they collected their data straight from student surveys, which I think is extremely important, because even as educators, as much as we try to push a certain type of instruction, it does not really matter unless the student is actually perceiving that. So for this study, they had 1,132 high school students. The demographics broken down there for you. Each student completed a survey per class that they were enrolled in. They had demographics and then questions that were directed towards connective instruction academic rigor, and lively teaching that occurs inside of that classroom. So questions like, how often does this teacher give you challenging work, right? That's towards academic rigor. How much do you feel like this teacher really knows who you are? That's connective instruction. And then how often do you work in groups with other students during this class? And that's for lively teaching. So they go on a scale from 1 to 5. And then that, once again, that is for every single class. So they have a total of 6,842 reports spanning across 581 different classes with 106 different teachers. And the most classes basically reported were English classes, social studies, math, and science. When they measured engagement, they asked questions like, how often do you do all your work in class? How happy are you in this class? If you don't understand something in this class, how often do you try to actually go out and figure it out? Okay, so here are the findings from the second study. Go ahead and pause and try to analyze this graph yourself and come up with a few observations. So now that you've paused it and you've come back, hopefully some of the observations that you would have come up with is that as the amount of instances reported or the extent reported by students of each of the practices, connective instruction, academic rigor, and lively teaching went up, so did classroom engagement, right? Hopefully the second thing that you picked up on was the difference that connective instruction has in comparison to academic rigor and lively teaching, right? Connective instruction is almost 7 times more effective than academic rigor for classroom engagement, which is extremely important. It was exactly what we're trying to get at here with this conference. So it's definitely important to have all 3 within your teaching and your classroom, but being able to understand that connective instruction is extremely effective for trying to get that overall classroom engagement, because the more that a student reported their teacher trying to actively get to know them or connect lessons back to them, which all falls under connective instruction, the more that they reported themselves as being more engaged in the classroom, which is where the learning happens, the participation happens. So hopefully you found those 2 observations. Here we see Tina, who's a 10th grader, describing her world history teacher who has a mix, but you can see really the emphasis of connective instruction here, right? So Tina says that he's there for her, he's there for the class, whether it be a Band-Aid, a quick checkup, recommendation, whatever the case may be. And that makes Tina want to reciprocate that relationship, right? She knows that he is putting in the work to get to know her, to get to know the class on an individual level. And so that in turn makes her want to put in work in order to reciprocate that relationship. So it's important to build that relationship with connective instruction, use it towards academic rigor to push our content, and then also differentiate the classroom tactics with lively teaching.
Thank you, Alberto and Matt, for sharing those pieces of research. You watched a clip of Harry Potter at the beginning of the presentation. In that clip, Tom and Harry were starting a relationship through a journal. Harry asked questions, Tom responded, Harry asked more questions. For all of you Potterheads listening, think about how Tom used the journal to get to know Ginny and trick her. Well, you as teachers shouldn't use dialogue journals to convince a first year to open a hidden chamber under your school, but maybe you can use dialogue journals to improve your relationships with your students. So what are dialogue journals? Dialogue journals are a way to facilitate written conversation between teachers and students about a wide range of topics, and they're proven to improve TSRs. How do dialogue journals work? A typical implementation of a dialogue journal consists just of a paper notebook and a clear goal of building a relationship. During class, the teacher will give students time to write in their dialogue journals. Their entry should ideally be a response to the teacher's last entry. However, potentially tough topics such as complaints, questions, concerns, experiences, challenges, opinions, and feelings are welcomed in the exchange. Prompts can be given from time to time. However, it is better if the conversation is just natural. Teachers should not grade students on grammar, rather allow the student to write freely while the teacher models professional writing. And while the frequency in which students and teachers write is irrelevant to the efficacy of the journal, it is important that both parties take equal turns and respond to each other in similar lengths. In their responses, teachers should not ask too many questions of their students, because then the student is placed in the role of a responder, not a communicator. On the left is an example from a dissertation written over dialogue journals. We won't walk through this example right now, as there are other examples later, but you can pause the video to read this and identify the elements of a good dialogue journal. There are a few explanations as to why dialogue journals work at improving teacher-student relationships. First, a potential mediator could just be the availability and contact between teachers and students. With dialogue journals, teachers can foster these relationships without impinging on class time. Dialogue journals allow for interactions to happen asynchronously, when students are in class and when teachers have time outside of class. Another possible explanation as to why dialogue journals work to improve student-teacher relationships is they allow access to each other's minds, ideally creating a safe place for students to share while encouraging a continued expansion of ideas to a real audience. Teachers can be quite closed off at times or too busy to try to create a safe space and share elements of themselves. Dialogue journals allow teachers and students to open up. I've actually already implemented dialogue journals with many of my students for the upcoming school year through my school's summer school program. And I wanted to share 2 examples of student work. This first example is from a 6th grade student. I asked them to reflect on a time that they had shown perseverance in learning something new, or what their current perceptions of math are and what they would like their perception of math to be at the end of the year. I do want to read this one. So a time I realized I could do anything was when I was determined to do something, like learn to ride a bike, even though I fell many times. I kept trying until I finally got it. Something that was hard for me was learning how to speak English. I couldn't speak English. I could not speak English because my family speaks mostly Spanish. When I was in kinder, I could still not speak English or understand it. I had a very nice teacher who taught me how to speak English. I still got mixed up sometimes until I finally got it. This year, I feel excited yet nervous. It feels exciting to have new teachers, new subjects, and new techniques we can learn along the way. I'm mainly excited because we will learn new things. I will try my hardest with every question I get. I hope this year I have a lot of fun. Questions for Mr. Poche. What were some challenges you faced along the way of becoming a teacher? Why did you become a teacher? When was the time you realized you could do anything? What baffles me about this example is that this is from a student who I have not yet interacted in person with yet. However, because of dialogue journals, I'm learning more about his life, and he is asking questions about mine, thus building a better teacher-student relationship. Here's an example from one of my 8th grade students. The student comments are in black and my response is in blue below. If you would like to read it, you can pause the video now. I will not be reading through this one. Finally, one possible argument against the use of dialogue journals in class is that they take time. And my response to this is twofold. Firstly, one time of the year that I see these journals being the most helpful is during the first week of school. And many teachers don't want to start covering content during this first week of school. Rather, they want to focus on forming relationships with their students. Dialogue journals would be perfect for this time because teachers could have students write in them during school and teachers could respond to their students after school. Secondly, teachers can use these literally whenever they want, whether that's when you finish a lesson 5 minutes early and need a quick activity for the students to do, or whenever you are planning late at night and you can't think of one more activity to fit in at a station. These journals could be easily worked in during either of those 2 times. Another limitation is the writing aspect of it. Many students, particularly students who are English learners, struggle with writing. Even when removing the barrier of enforcing correct spelling and grammar, still some students struggle to type words onto a page. Because of this, I think it would be worth it to investigate Flipgrid as a possible option. Flipgrid, of course, allows students and teachers to record short videos of themselves. This would allow students to respond in an audio format. Additionally, students can respond in the form of drawing a picture or some other artistic representation. And finally, I implemented this through a shared Google Doc to allow students to type. To conclude, this standard encapsulates the goal of dialogue journaling in all of its facets. Dialogue journals seek to form positive relationships because research shows that positive relationships improve student outcomes. And dialogue journals improve teacher-student relationships by focusing on and finding similarities in students' individual characteristics, needs, and interests. Dialogue journaling is a powerful tool to improve teacher-student relationships, and strong teacher-student relationships improve the well-being of everyone involved. Just some questions for discussion. How do you plan on fostering relationships with your students? Do you see yourself implementing dialogue journals? If your school is online this fall, how will that affect your plan to create relationships? And finally, what are potential barriers to implementing dialogue journals? Thank you so much for watching.